Hello folks, come on in, the door is open. It's time for another episode of After Hours Woodworking. Hello, I'm your host Chad Stanton, and on this show I like to tell you about what's going on in my shop. I answer some email questions, and I do a little product suggestion called Should You Own It? Now for the regular viewers, you probably noticed I have a different background here, which is nice for me to separate the Monday show from the Wednesday from the Friday. So, what have I been up to? Well, a lot's been going on, and one of the biggest things I want to say and I want to welcome is another sponsor, which is McFeely's. Now, you're probably thinking, wait a second, I've heard that name before. Sure you have. If you've looked through any of the woodworking magazines, you usually see an ad for McFeely's in there. One of the main things that they sell are screws. Now, prior to knowing McFeely's, I thought, a screw's a screw, no big deal. A couple years ago, McFeely's came down to Dayton Woodworking Club. I was there giving a little lecture, and then the fellow right after me was from McFeely's. And, I first thought, that's screws, who cares? It was really quite interesting, all the science and technology that goes behind these screws. Now, are their screws going to cost a little bit more? Yes, a little bit, but here's what you're getting better quality. If you're like me, you've probably gone into the big box store and you're doing a job, a project, and the little wood screws come in a little tiny package and they're overpriced. So what do? Well, we grab 1.25 or 2.5 inch drywall screws, right? Guilty. Well, those are made for drywall. They're not really made for woodworking. And one of the problems I had, I mentioned to you before, was that I had a rigid impact driver and I hated using it because it had so much torque it would snap the heads off of the drywall screws. And, nothing's more frustrating than trying to dig that out of the project. Not going to have that problem with the McFeely screws because they're made of a higher quality. So the first thing is that they're made with a stronger metal to it, or whatever the material is. I'm not a scientist. It's a stronger material that the screw's made out of. The second thing is, which is nice, is on the threads, they're sharp. So it's going to have like an easy start to it, and it's got the sharp threads, so not only does it cut in fast, but it has really good holding power to it. One nice thing about these screws is that they're made for, in most cases, no need to pre-drill a pilot hole, which is pretty awesome. The threads on it are coated with a dry lube. So again, so it goes in faster. I've had on some cases, like really hardwoods, I'd have to dip the screw either in soap or some wax to get it to go in. And the dry lube, well, it's not going to interfere with the stain or finish that you put on your project. Now, all of the screws come with the Robinson square drive. You're probably familiar with square drive if you use the Craig screws. Well, I know what you're probably thinking. Said the same myself. Oh, I've got one of those magnetic Phillip tips that will hold my screw in place. And it will. I mean, you can see just by moving it a little bit, it's starting to sag. There's some wiggle to it. And lots of times I would be holding a cabinet and trying to get my drill up in there. And as soon as I hit the cabinet, the screw would, fall off to the side like that. With the Robinson square drive, the driver bit as well as the screw, well, it's like slightly tapered. So when you put it on there, you give a little push, get it snug, and you can see that this screw is basically locked on. Pretty nice. Very handy in that case. And with that locking on, wow, you saw how hard I had to pull that. With that locking in deep like that, you're also going to prevent stripping the head out. So it's a quality product, and I'm really happy to have them as a sponsor. I'm happy to be representing them, and I'm happy that they are educating me on the difference in their fasteners from the common stuff that's out there. Same thing was when I was looking at saw blades. I thought table saw blades were all the same until I met the folks over at Forest, and it really opened my eyes. So if you're a regular viewer of the show, you know that I'm only going to suggest things of good quality to you that's money well spent. And if you plan on doing some serious furniture building, I'd highly consider looking at McFeely's website and finding the right screw and fastener that's for you and your project. Even outdoor projects, if you're doing decks or construction or whatever, they've got you set there too. But since I focus on furniture, that's primarily what I'm going to do. So give them a call. They'll be happy to answer any of your questions. And I'm going to put a link in the description of the video there, some of the frequently asked questions about the pros and cons to using these square drive screws. So it's kind of an interesting little page there. Won't take long to read. Okay, so that's my big news. Real happy about that. What I've been doing in the shop, I did a mantle, fireplace mantle cut down for a customer. Had a contractor that was remodeling the kitchen. Customer bought this mantle at a garage sale. It was too long, too tall to fit where she needed it. Contractor couldn't do it, gave me a call. Worked out for everyone. I got paid, customer got happy, and it's a win-win. I also filmed it too, so I'll have a little video of that in the upcoming weeks for you. I also picked up a new customer. The two brothers, they bought a local pub that was here in town, and they're remodeling it. They're going to open it under a new name. And the tabletops were they're terrible. They're hideous. They're all different colors and sizes were goofy. So they called me out there to see about making new tops for them. So I'm going to do that. I'm filming that as well. And it's going to be kind of a fun video for me because I'm filming it kind of like an extreme home makeover while I'm building the tops. I'm also going to be putting in some footage of them doing the remodel at the restaurant. So I think it'll be a fun video for that. So Dennis and Les. Dennis has been on vacation for 2 weeks. He's gone seeing some family, so that was just basically me and Les hanging out. And we didn't do a whole lot of woodworking the last 2 weeks here. He wanted to do some talking and wanted to share with me his thoughts as his health progresses down, some of his wishes that he would like to see followed through on. So we did some talking, but we did get a little bit of woodworking in. We're always talking woodworking, even if we're not working on it. So I really enjoy my time with Les. I see him on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it's always a pleasant visit. Okay, so let's get into email question. Let me reset up for that because I've got some props I got to show you, and then we'll address what we got to cover. This week's email question comes from Paul Byland. Now, Paul was trying to make a mortise on a really, really wide board. I didn't quite understand that at first in the email, so this was some of the advice I gave him. To start with, I suggest if you have a board and you're trying to make a mortise on it, I usually do mine by hand if it's just one or two, but if I got multiples to do, that's where a power tool comes in handy, and the router is the ideal tool for that. Now, the router that you would need for it would be a plunge router. This is a plunge router. I have a fence on it. Now, what the fence allows me to do is, the fence allows me to position the router over exactly where that mortise will be. Then I would turn it on. I would make the plunge cut to the depth that I would want. And then the fence allows me to move the router along to the length that it needs to be. And then you would plunge out, turn it off, and take it out. Perfect. It's a great tool to have. But what's if you don't have that router with the fence? Now, here's a router that I've had for many years. great router by Milwaukee. And I don't know if it came with the fence or if I lost it somewhere along the ways, but I can still do something similar. If the mortise doesn't sit in too far, what I can do is I can take a scrapped piece of wood and you can clamp this wood on here, and then that will act like the fence that I need to make that mortise. However, this is not a plunge router. This is a fixed, and so I'd have to dial it down. So what I would do is I would have the bit stick out maybe somewhere between 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch, and then you have to ease into it, like you're tilting into it, and then you can make that cut again with the fence on there. Okay. Now let's say that you don't even have that. All you have is one of these little trim routers. Now, it's not ideal for making big, deep mortise cuts, but in a pinch, these have worked. So again, if I don't have a fence on it, or let's say that the workpiece is really wide, which I think was the case with Paul. His was really wide. What you can do, because no fence will reach to the middle of a wide board, what you can do is take a scrap piece of wood, and I would glue some paper down on the workpiece, and then put more glue on top of that, and glue my temporary fence down on the workpiece. And that paper in between, what that's going to allow is, it's going to allow the glue to hold the workpiece and the fence together, but that paper will allow it to rip and tear off when I'm done, and I just have a little bit of cleanup then, so it does a nice job. Then what I can do is, same thing, have the router bit sticking out just a little bit, and you would tilt down into it, go make your cut, and then lift straight out. And you would repeat that process until you get to the depth that you want. So there, Paul, I hope that answered your question as far as making mortises go. I've talked about it in the past. I will be doing a video series on mortise and tenons, doing it by hand, doing it with power tools, whether it's the router, table saw, a mortising machine, bandsaw. I'll cover it all, and I have started working on that, but we got a few videos before that. Okay, let me reset up now, and we're going to talk about, should you own it? If you watched Monday's episode, I told you that I was doing a little bit of carving. Now, this is just for me. It's not for a job. It's something that, well, I just like to do when I have the free time. And I started thinking about it. You know, I'm always talking about how much I love my Flexcut chip carving knife, but I never really used any of their chisels, their carving chisels. So I thought, well, I'm going to get some. Now, you're probably familiar with Flexcut has these small carving chisels, like palm chisels, that fit in your hand. And they fit real nice. It's a real comfortable feeling, actually. But I'm not used to working with small ones. Not to say that I can't learn, but I like to have bigger chisels, especially if I'm going to work in something harder. This is just basswood, so it's no problem. But if I do some carving in cherry, or heaven forbid, maple, I need something a little bit stronger that I can beat on. So Flexcut has what they call their mallet chisels, and this is their mallet deluxe set of carving chisels. And so I bought them, and one of the reasons I wanted them was, I liked how the chip carving knife felt and worked, and I also like the fact that these are made in the United States. So I bought them, and the first thing that I noticed was the handle is very comfortable. I really liked how the handle felt in my hand, but the actual metal coming out to form the carving chisel it's flat. It starts off flat and then it's formed. I don't know if these are stamped out. It looks like it would be on a stamp. So I kind of thought, geez, I don't know. That looks kind of, wimpy. I'm used to my Swiss-made carving chisels. File makes them. And, this has always been a good brand for me. And I like the fact that the shaft is more round. It feels more robust. So already I kind of started off with a negative feel. But I started using them, and not only were they were adequately sharp right out of the box. That was impressive. They were working good on the wood. Of course, it is basswood. But what I found was that the flat part, I'm really starting to like it, because the way I like to hold my chisel is I will put my finger on it. I put my finger, and then so this arm is doing the pushing, this arm is acting like the brake, and I'll work back and forth. The two arms are working back and forth, but I put my finger forward on it. I do that for several reasons. One, when we're sawing, your hand should not be gripping around the handle of the saw. That finger should be pointing forward. Same thing when I'm using a plane, a block plane or hand plane. The finger is always kind of pushing forward. It's mentally telling you the direction you're going, all right? So I'll do the same thing when I hold my chisels. And that's just a nice, wide place for me to put my finger. Again, I'm not a professional carver. I just do it for fun. And holding that's how it feels natural for me. So kind of oddly, I started to get used to these real quick. So, as far as the price on them, well, they're pretty competitive in price. The file chisels made over in Switzerland, they're about roughly somewhere around $40 average, at your woodcraft store. And Flexcut, which is made right here in the United States, they average about $30 a chisel. So, they are not your odd lot specials. They're going to perform way better than that. If you're just strictly in it for the low price, yeah, you can go to odd lots. But as far as quality, it seems like these are of decent quality. So I think it's money well spent if you're interested in doing it. The set comes with 10, and I have to admit, not all 10 are exactly the ones that I use. I think I was favoring 7 out of the 10, and out of those 7, there were 3 that I'm primarily using the most on it. So I think in my case, I probably will have to buy a couple of individual carving chisels specifically for what I like to do. But it's not a bad set at all. And the part that cracked me up was it came with this little thing inside with the chisels, and I thought, was that a little sharpening stone or something? No, it's a holder for Band-Aids. I thought it was funny. They got a sense of humor, probably telling you that their chisels are sharp enough right out of the box you will probably cut yourself. So I thought that was kind of cute, kind of funny. So there you go. That's my segment of Should You Own It? Remember, this segment is not a tool review because it's not really fair. In a tool review, I need to have multiple companies, multiple products of the same tool and compare them in an equal test. This is strictly my 20 years experience of working in the trades and building furniture, of what I've come to like and features that I would prefer to see on certain tools. So there you go. So far, I'm liking the Flexcut chisel set. Some final words. Video coming out this Friday. It's going to continuation of the series that we're doing with Dennis Laney. The first video gave his experience and his background in furniture making. Then the second one showed his workbench that he had. A lot of people really enjoyed the little bit of tidbits of knowledge that Dennis throws in there. The video coming out this Friday, it will be another workbench of his that was inspired by a Roy Underhill build, and the things he liked about it and the things that let him down, which leads up to his ultimate workbench, one that he said will be the last workbench he'll ever need. He took a combination of everything that he liked and put it all into one. It's very cool. That's coming up in 2 weeks. I am working on that video series I said of the Mortise and tenons. I think it's going to be a great series, and we're going to kind of pepper them in here and there in between projects and some other quick tips. But if you are in the neighborhood of West Virginia, I think it's Huntington, West Virginia, October 27th, I'm going to be down there. And Mortise and tenon joints is going to be one of the topics I'm going to be demonstrating and talking about. It's the Heritage Farms Museum, and they're having a festival. It's their first festival. It's really cool. It's like a little town village. Yeah, it's a village set up 100 years ago. And so there's going to be people there doing blacksmithing, and Gerald Vance, he's going to be doing there. He's going to be doing some woodworking demonstrations, and they'll be doing like stuff with the stray and the straw and the hay, and how they would make clothes or whatever they did back in those colonial times. It's all going to be there. It's be a great time. I'll be doing 2 demonstrations out there, so if you're in the neighborhood, stop on out. I'll have a little link below. If you're interested in more details of it, you can click on that. So that should wrap it up. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget, keep on dancing.